but hopefully they're all coming in now. This is our final session. And what I want really in this session is to feel roots of optimism about the future. I think it's going to be pretty tough, certainly from our mini summit just then. I think, you know, really moving stories that we've heard today about people's experiences. But without further ado, I think that people are coming in now, but I'll carry on because I do know that Andy Haldane, who could be in years to come, his legacy might be the words levelling up, and was certainly involved. And he's now at the Royal Society of Arts, leading that way. Great innovation, very big brain, and looked after our money at the Bank of England for quite a long while. So he probably knows what he's talking about. And here's Henri, so it's okay. So what we've got now, and I'm just wondering for the people who are reporting back, if you might want to go here, because he's not here in person, and you can have a look at him. He's wearing a very nice white shirt, and looks rather very responsible young man. He's done very well. Okay, so shall we roll the film, which is called Andy Haldane? Again, wanted to be here, couldn't, but I think that's the joy really of doing this in this new hybrid world, that you can do that and you can get the good commentary here. So anyway, over to Andy Haldane and his vision for the future.
Hello everyone, I'm Andy Haldane, Chief Executive of the RSA, delighted to be here speaking in the closing session of this Northern Powerhouse Summit on Education, Employment and Skills. I know you've had a fantastic lineup of speakers. I'm sure we've heard some fantastic discussion and speeches from them on these absolutely crucial questions. The macroeconomic backdrop to the summit could not be more challenging. We all know, and I'm sure you've heard a lot already, about the difficulties being caused by the cost of living crisis. That's affecting families, the length and breadth, of course, of the UK, but none more than families and places that have been struggling in some cases for many years, in others for many decades. It's also the case, though, that accompanying this challenge are some huge opportunities to level up the country, to unlock opportunity among those people and within those places that have been struggling for years, and in some cases, decades. And indeed, as part of the Levelling Up white paper, which I contributed towards, we put some numbers to the extent of the potential that might be unlocked for those people in those places. And that runs to tens, if not hundreds, of billions of pounds each year. So the size of the prize here, the scale of the opportunity, could not be greater, particularly in the light of that cost of living crisis. Now, the theme of the summit has been about bridging the gap, and it's clear to everyone, I think, that those gaps spatially across the UK are absolutely enormous, and indeed have been getting wider over time, certainly over the last 50 to 70 years. Those gaps are big between regions, between north and south, but indeed those differences spatially are also very large and widening within regions. The problems we're often dealing with are genuinely hyper local, and that underscores the extent and scale of the levelling up challenge that we all face. And that levelling up challenge isn't confined to gaps just in pay and in living standards. It shows up in levels of longevity. It shows up in levels of well-being. It shows up in levels of attainment in schools and in levels of skills in society. So the gaps are many and various. They cover pretty much every aspect of the life cycle. And therefore, if we are to tackle those gaps, close those gaps over time, what the Levelling Up White Paper made clear is that we will need a multi-pronged strategy, one that speaks not just to what's sometimes called human capital, but to physical capital, to cultural capital, to institutional capital, to social capital. And the plan that was put in place in the white paper hopefully spoke to each and every one of those capitals. The particular theme I want to touch on in the remaining part of my remarks, however, was around the crucial issue of skills, the crucial question of human capital, because looking across the UK, plainly, those gaps in skills, those gaps in educational attainment are very significant, and in some ways have become even more significant over time. By skills, by education, I don't, of course, just refer to cognitive skills, to academic skills, but even more importantly, to non-cognitive skills and to vocational attainment of various types. In some ways, the skill shortages and skills deficits are even more acute when it comes to those non-cognitive skills and those vocational skills, in ways that should worry us along at least two distinct, if related, dimensions. And the first relates to aggregate growth in the economy and a strategy for that. And the second relates to the distribution of that growth across the economy. In other words, levelling up. And I think we need to tackle with real zeal the skills problem if we are to have any hope of both boosting growth at the aggregate level and to shift and to shrink those widening distributional disparities in different parts of the country. And to make this point concrete, let me start just by making some observations on the drivers of growth in the UK over the past, say, 15 years since the dawning of the global financial crisis. So economists like me sometimes decompose growth in the economy into two components. It can come either from a growth in the number of people working, or from a rise in the productivity of those workers in the economy. It can come from one or other of those cylinders. If you decompose UK growth over the last 15 years, you will find that almost all of the growth has come from the first cylinder, the words expansion in the number of workers, rather than improvements in the productivity of those workers. Productivity over that period is largely flat-lined, and almost all of the growth has come from an increased number of workers. Some of those have come from increased participation in the workforce, particularly by older people, and particularly by women. Those are very encouraging trends. And some has also come from an increased number of people arriving from other countries through net immigration. Now, that backward-looking diagnosis of growth is very relevant when it comes to looking forward and thinking about growth in future. What we found over the last couple of years is that those trends have gone into reverse, that rather than expanding, the workforce has been contracting over the last couple of years, and that's partly because that net flow of workers from overseas has reduced. But more materially, it's been because participation in the labour force has been declining, bucking its pre-COVID trends. Almost as many as 1 million people have left the UK labour force over the last couple of years, perhaps partly for lifestyle reasons and partly for reasons of COVID-related long-term sickness. And that's super relevant, of course, because that means that first cylinder of UK growth has now stalled. It has now seized up. And on the assumption that cylinder doesn't start firing up again in future, what we'll need is a second cylinder, in other words, growth in productivity, to pick up if we are to drive forward aggregate growth in the economy. And on that second cylinder, what is the secret source of improvements in productivity? Well, of course, that is reliant on skills, on improving the skill set of our workforce. And as those 1 million people have exited the UK workforce, we've seen skill shortages become more acute than at any time in my working lifetime. That's why the stock of vacancies, unfilled vacancies in the economy, is at its highest ever level. And those skill shortages, those staff shortages, are very broadly based. They are true across pretty much every sector, and they are true across pretty much every region of the UK. Solving and sorting out those skills deficits of long-standing, but made more acute by events of the past 2 years, is going to be crucial for driving aggregate growth in the economy, and particularly crucial in those parts of the country that have done less well historically, and which suffer from the largest and longest-lived skills deficits of various types. So given that prognosis, rather gloomy prognosis, on both aggregate performance and distributional performance of the economy, what is to be done? Well, I mean, the good news is quite a lot already is being done. There are new initiatives aplenty that speak to those skills deficits problems. Think about T-levels, which we should also all aspire in time to have equal status to A-levels. Think about the local skills improvement plans, the LSIPs that are being put in place, very place specific, very focused on the skills needed in the workplace. Think about the lifetime learning guarantee, a means of enabling skill building throughout the life cycle in older adults as well as in younger adults. I'd say there's initiatives, generally speaking, directionally right. They are, if you like, a down payment on what you might call a 21st century model of education. The model that served us so well in the 19th and 20th century focused on building cognitive skills in young people. That model worked well in centuries past. It will not work well in the 21st century. For the 21st century, the educational model needs to focus on older as well as younger as an educational model, and it needs to focus on non-cognitive as well as cognitive skills. So these are useful down payments, but I would suggest more is needed in both scale and scope if that new 21st century model of skill building is to become a reality, given the scale and scope of the skills deficits I've mentioned. Let me mention one final point, which is, for all the fact that qualifications are great, and educational institutions are crucially important, let's not forget the absolutely fundamental role that the private sector plays, that companies play when it comes to skill building and closing those skills deficits. Much of the skill building, much of the training that people have takes place on the job. And truth be told, UK companies are towards the bottom of the international league table when it comes to the amount they spend in training their staff, in investing in their staff. So if we are to close those skill deficits right across the country, but particularly in those places doing less well, I think companies will need to invest as never before in the skills of their staff. That war for talent makes that now an absolute imperative. It's no longer the case that companies can go and pinch skills from other companies, because we know we have an aggregate deficit of skills. We suffer from a fallacy of composition if companies think they can outsource their skill building to other companies. Now is the time. A stronger case could be made now than at any point in the last 50 years for companies themselves investing in their staff as never before. And the debate ought to be about what would it take to deliver that? Are there tax incentives needed for companies to do more to invest in their staff? Are there other schemes that could be in place to encourage companies to invest more in their people? Ultimately, that has to be part of the solution to this chronic skills deficit of long-standing, but made more acute of the past few years. Those are issues for the future. They pose a real challenge today to both growth and to leveling out, but they also pose a great opportunity to both level up and to grow the economy. Way back, someone said that the policy agenda of their government needs to be three things, which was education, education, and education. And for today, several years on, several decades on, the mantra needs to change. The mantra needs instead to be skills, skills, skills. And this summit, I think, has been a fantastic down payment itself on making good on that mantra. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
It was long, but it was good, and he got there in the end. So if you take away one thing from this conference, the future is skills, skills, skills. So I'd like to now bring up for our very final session the wonderful Minnie Moll from the Design Council. Welcome back, Minnie. We've got Dr. Rachel Cooper, who's from the Institute for Apprenticeships, and yet again we've got Henri Murison. So welcome back, and you've got me. So anyway, am I switched on? Yeah. Okay, I'll sit here. So I'm going to make this sort of short and sharp and lively, because we're all sort of had quite a long day one way or another. We've just come back from our mini summits, but I mean, before we go into that a little bit more, in terms of, as I said at the very beginning, we want to be optimistic as we leave this conference, and we think that whilst we have been moaning quite a bit, there are reasons to be cheerful always, not just for the sun shining on Manchester for once. So just quickly, Minnie, I mean, just listening to Andy Haldane, some really good stuff there. It's the second time I've actually heard it, and I thought he was going to stop earlier than he did, because I have heard it before, but I didn't realize it went on so long. Anyway, Minnie, on skills, that whole thing about opportunities, you know, the cognitive skills, we've talked about that, what kind of skills we need, you know, throughout the day. But again, just really a few quick comments on the Andy Haldane we just heard.
So it won't surprise you, with my design and creative industries hat on, I'm actually going to dive straight into the importance of creative problem solving skills. He sort of alluded to it, but Andy Burnham, thank you, Andy, absolutely spoke about how education is just not supporting the creative subjects. And he spoke, Manchester is an incredibly creative city, and the reason we've really got to think about the creative problem solving skills is we've got to redesign just about every aspect of how we live our lives.
Yeah.
And so if you think of that in the broadest sense, we need all kinds of approaches, but we really do need at the heart. And I'm going to rattle through about 5 key things I've heard people say today. The need for thinking differently, the need to design, redesign. Thank you, Andy Burnham also said co-designing with people, with communities, with places. We need system change. We need whole system thinking. We have got a creative crucible in West Yorkshire. Drama is therapy, music is flow, and we've all really got to actually release our inner warrior. So there's been a lovely flow through the day about some of those creative skills.
Thanks, Minnie, that's great. We'll come back. I'm just doing it in order. So Henri, I feel like I've spent a lot of time with you today, but it's all been good.
I mean, in 30 seconds, I think our session was really interesting, and we talked a bit about the Doncaster model. We've got a colleague from Doncaster here in the room, a bit as well about the wider challenges around the current educational settlement in this country, essentially, and the constraints of a kind of a very academically focused curriculum, what the alternatives might be. And I think that was a really interesting discussion and session. I think particularly the voice of someone who was still in the system was very perceptive and very challenging about what the real divide should be between the national and the local, and setting a very clear challenge to us. If we are going to talk about wanting to redesign the system to enable us particularly to focus on those who currently are not getting the most from it, then we need to be really clear about actually how we would do it rather than just kind of pontificating. So that was a very helpful grounding, but it was a great vibe and feeling in the room, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And I think I don't know if she's still here, but Annabelle, was yeah, you are. Yeah, no, very good indeed, and really told it like it was. I think in terms of what it's like. And like I said, it was a long time since I was your age, but getting that sort of, and we've heard great voices throughout the day, but getting that sort of like, that's what it's like for us. And, the over-centralisation point keeps bobbing up, and also the powers of the Department of Education, that centralisation there just does not make sense in terms of where we are post-pandemic. And I think the gaps are new gaps often. Just interesting, really quickly, obviously Andy Haldane there really being fairly scientific and all of those things. And I think it's a good point. We do need skills. He did actually pick up on some of the points that we made in our session, that it's not all about academic achievement and what does success look like, and for people. Just want to quickly comment on that, Henri.
Yeah, no, and I think the kind of the challenge though, isn't it, is that Andy is an author of a white paper that talked very little about skills. So, I remember education. Tony really did used to talk about it all the time. I mean, it wasn't just like he said it once, then he forgot about it. He kept saying it pretty repeatedly, and then actually he did do some other stuff. And so, Andy isn't here to defend himself. So no. I don't blame him for all the deficiencies of the white paper, but I think you do have to be self-aware enough that when you've just written a document like that, you have to own the fact that it's going to follow you around a bit. And bluntly, if I managed to write a white paper that didn't get the DFE to promise very much in it, I'd be a bit more circumspect about saying that we should focus on skills, bluntly.
Which leads me, segues well into you, Rachel. And obviously we've talked about apprenticeship, but the skills point, and I'm really interested again because the green skills and the gap in green skills, just getting your take on what Andy said, but also the big message for you out of today.
Well, I think taking from what Andy said, that we need to kind of widen what we think of as success, and that focus on skills, and that it can come from different routes. It can come from vocational routes, from technical routes, as well as academic. That for me has been one of the big themes. It's that kind of perception of the different career offers, the different routes that we can give to young people that should be seen of, that should be talked about, should be seen as successful. I think that is one of the biggest things that we need to shift in the country. So I work for the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education. I don't know if I could admit this, but we are an arm's length body of the Department for Education. But we are absolutely focused on listening to employers what is it that you need to be within the occupational standards for all of the different routes that we've got? What is it that's going to give the students, the learners, the skills they need for successful careers? And actually, if something needs to change, kind of the reason we exist is to evolve and adapt those standards and keep them current. And the net zero challenge is a massive one for us. We've listened to what government said about the Green Jobs Task Force, about what are the sectors and the areas that need to change. And we're now, you know, just on a really practical level, going and reviewing our standards. What is it that's in the apprenticeships? We haven't got an apprenticeship on heat pumps yet, so we're developing one. And I think we just need to kind of boil it down to that practical level and listen to what is it employers are saying they need, and then have we got a technical education system that actually is going to work and is going to deliver it. And I think I was just sort of reflecting on what would be my takeaway from listening to the conference today. We talk a lot about an integrated skill system, one that's working and flowing right from schools, through colleges, into businesses, into apprenticeships. I'm not sure yet that we've got a proper, deep enough regional understanding of what businesses across the whole country need. That's what I think we need to shift. So I guess the door is open from the Institute. If businesses in your region in the north, if it's not working, actually, if there are gaps in that tech ed system, come and talk to us. That's what we exist to do.
Yeah, and I think that whole sort of joining it up is so important. I think the links between business, what they want, the links between universities and the innovation, that whole sort of investment in R&D, the jobs of the future. I think you said in our session that Michael Gove's is always going to insist on teaching classics in schools, but we do need to there needs to be a massive shift, I think, whatever happens in people's thinking about what does good look like? What does, you know, I've heard the words sort of too often, failure, from the young people here today, and it's just not, it can't be right in this society that, you know, people are feeling they failed when actually they are the future. Sorry, that's isn't that children are the future? Oh my goodness, where did that come from? Anyway. Oh God, I'm going to break into song now. I don't really, you'll be safe from that. But I mean, seriously, I think that sort of, you know, how the metric even, I mean, how business link up with schools, how schools link up with community, all of those things mean to me that it's not going to be done at department level. Of course you need an overriding system, but as Andy said, where are you, Andy? I don't think you're still here in our session. There you are, lifelong learning. You know, it doesn't need to be that way. So coming back to you, Minnie, it's around how do we design a better future? We can do this. We just got to think differently. And really, you know, a great opportunity. I think, I'm a bit biased, I think that the North can lead the way. I think we've got the right attitude. We've got metro mayors here. They know that there's a bit of delivery there. We need to unlock that potential. So hopefully, you know, people will be in a situation where they basically live, work, rest and play and stay in education or stay in work and stay where they in the North and not gravitate back to an overheated you know, London, where actually it's not that great to live, to be honest. I've repatriated up here and I just think it's the best, really. I don't miss London at all.
Jill, can I just build on that with one quick thing? And this is, so I'm not from Manchester. I don't live in London, but not from here. Just something to play back to you all that are. I was really privileged recently to sit in a presentation about Bilbao. Yeah. And it was the most phenomenal presentation about this kind of 25, 30-year absolute transformation. I mean, to some extent, sort of design driven. But do you know what the secret ingredient was? Long-term vision and absolute alignment. And it was in a way that it was the municipalities, it was all of the key stakeholders. And what happened was through any changes over those 25 years, it was carved in stone. They had a vision, and of course, a vision that's tangible. Design coming in, this is what it's going to look like. Everyone can look at it and relate and go, wow, phenomenal turnaround, vision, long-term planning. And I have to just play back to you, sitting here and seeing three mayors who probably have their odd fisticuffs every now and then, but three mayors who have got so much alignment and are working so positively together, I felt a bit of a frisson of excitement. I really, really did, because you can start to see the potential to have long-term vision, long-term plan, because we're not going to achieve what we need if we don't have long-term vision and long-term planning. We'll just do a series of little sprints and it will never amount to what we need. So I thought that was very exciting.
Well, I think it is exciting. I mean, whether we get it delivered is yet to be seen, but I think we need to turn that into fruition and ask. I'm just gonna wind it up, and we're gonna have the last word with Rory, who some of you will have met. But I just really sort of, if there's, when we come to the next Northern Powerhouse Education, Employment and Skills Summit 23, if we, which I think we should do, we have the same conversation, or not the same conversation, but still talking about it. It's been a bit of a journey for me, because this is like the third one, and every time there's been something that's going to happen, Brexit, COVID, and now I think cost of living. And I think the next iteration we need to really build on today. There's just a quick ask really of, let's not have the same conversation. Let's move the let's move the furniture around a bit and begin to join it up. I think we do have an ask. I think we may well be more powers, but we need to define what we mean by that and what good devolution means. So I said, Rachel, what do you want to see? Not putting you on the spot or anything.
So I think it's participation from every part of the system. I think it's where central government's got a role to play if it's setting a system and framework for tech ed. It's businesses taking up every opportunity that is on offer. There shouldn't be a penny of the levy that's unspent. Is unspent, yeah. I mean that's opportunities for young people that aren't being used. So that's what I'd like to see.
Henry?
I mean, doesn't everybody want a sort of post-19 adult skills devolution for Christmas? You know, that's what I've asked for in my stocking in advance. And I think that's what Andy will probably ask for, the two Andys, because there's the West Midlands as well. And then I think West Yorkshire, Liverpool City will get it as well. And that is a tangible step forward. I think I would like us to start investing more money in the life chances of the poorest kids in our communities. And I think that will be done better by us than by central government. That is what I would like us to have made some progress on.
And Minnie, I think you've already said it, but
the only thing I would add is that in terms of never waste a good crisis, I think the crisis we mustn't waste is the planetary crisis. Yeah. Because if we accelerate and invest in that, we address to some extent cost of living, we address the climate crisis, to some extent geopolitical crisis, and there is huge opportunity in those hills. So I think of all the crises, that's the one we really mustn't waste.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're drawing to a conclusion. Just before, I'm going to bring, if Rory, come to the fancy lectern there, and you can give us the final word. But just before we do that, I just want to say a big thank you to absolutely everybody, including my excellent team. WSP, thank you very much, and the Design Council for supporting the event. We had lots and lots of interest from employers and businesses and everybody across the north. And hopefully next year it will be even bigger and better. So get in there. I want to say particular thanks to the RSA, Child Poverty Action Group, Home, where we have enjoyed our time today, the Institute for Employment Studies, the Association of Colleges, the Learning and Work Institute, URSA, and last but not least, Henri, the Northern Powerhouse Partnership for helping me really pull this together. And, you know, we've sort of grown our little grouping of supporters here because we're all in the same, swimming in the same direction. So thank you so much. You've all been excellent. And I'm leaving with the star of the show. It's not me, by the way. It's Rory from Wigan, who spoke earlier. And really the same question to you, Rory, about the last word about what you want to see.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jill. And a big thank you to everyone who's attended here today. I think I can say collectively, we're all working to set children up for life, lifelong learning through education, employment and skills. I would say my vision for the future is an education where not only I'm empowered, I'm supported to thrive in life. I'm not sure if anyone was here earlier when I was talking to the mayoral panel about a child in care. So especially I'm very worried when I come to leave care with the support that I've got. Almost, I would say I'm being failed by the system. And absolutely, we don't need the government to take action now when we can do it ourselves. And collectively, that's what we're here doing today. We're working, should I say, to set children up for life. When it comes to skill development, is something which is so important. And absolutely, I'm going to give a plug to Youth Leaders UK, which is based here in Greater Manchester with their skill development programs. They're doing some amazing work and we need that nationwide. It supports young people, it empowers them to thrive and definitely improves their life outcomes. So really summing the conversation up today is, well, what can we do for young people? And we need to work together, which I think is really important and worth noting. Thank you.
So, well done, Rory, and well said. Again, thank you one and all for being with us today. Henry's making a speedy exit. There we go. And you all can all go and bask in the sunshine. I know I'm looking forward to having a little